Hey, you're listening to Blindsight. Let's go. Mental health isn't something to take lightly. It's time to fight. It's time to thrive. Let's do this.
Hi there. Welcome to Blindsight. Glad to have you listening in. I'm your host, Bill Lundgren, as usual. And we're going to continue today to talk about how to deal with transitions. And, it's a big topic and, trying to whittle it down to its essence for all of us to be helpful. And I know Jonathan had some questions that he wants to pose to me. So Jonathan Price and I are going to do this show together as we have in the past. And I wanted to just start off with something that I omitted in the previous session, which is I got reminded of this morning when I woke up, and my 5-year-old black lab golden mix was on the bed, which he's, of course, not. As a guide dog, we're told not to have our dogs do it, but I ignore that. He had his head on my chest and was looking up at me. I assume it was adoringly. He didn't look like he wanted dinner or going out or anything. He just made it clear to me that he wanted time for me to scratch his head and, play with his ear and just pay attention to him. And I was reminded in past days when I had some stepchildren who'd be spending the weekend with me. And, the one was 4 years old. The other was, if I remember correctly, 6. And they'd run into the bedroom first thing in the morning and jump on the bed and want to be paid attention in the same way. And what that conjured up for me, that even in all kinds of transitions, we've got to be open to and look for gratitude.
Yeah.
Even in the darkest things, people will do something, or your pet will respond to you. The children will respond in a way to help you feel gratitude in the middle of all that, which helps to ease some of the pain of the painful part of transition. And we have to keep in mind those positive things, because there's always something that we can find if we look for it. And so, and to have some gratitude for those moments when, when we can be taken away from the heaviness of the transition to the place of centering and saying, yeah, okay, I'll get through this. And that's kind of my thought. What are your thoughts, Jonathan?
Being able to be mindful in the moment is very difficult, especially when we're, I guess, we have so many things that are trying to pull our direction and our attention away from the moment or the present. I remember a few weeks ago, that's probably a few months ago, but Landon we had just come home from school. This was last year. And he had these little popper, like firecracker things that you throw on the ground and they pop. They're not super loud, but they're just kind of fun to play with. And he had a box of them. There are 2 boxes of them. And he really wanted me to come out and throw them on the ground with him. And in that moment, I said no originally because I was getting ready to do another recording. It was in about half an hour and I needed to do show prep. And then I stopped dead in my tracks and I said, he just wants 5 minutes to connect with you and do something that's kind of manly in his eyes and blow stuff up, And I was like, how dumb are you? Just go outside and throw some explosives on the ground. It's fun. So I did. Yeah. I went outside and we had so much fun and just, throwing them on the ground and hearing them pop. And, it was a fun little, it was no more than 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. But to be mindful in those moments and to just not slough off or to
be
not,
available.
Yeah, to be available, but then to say that you are the most important thing in my life in this moment. Work is always going to be there. The laundry is going to be there. The dishes are going to be there. And, you know, when you finally get to those moments and you don't take advantage of them, those are the things we typically regret later on in life, not being available for. It's not that we regret, you know, maybe going on a vacation or a trip, or we all have different regrets or things that we wish that we would do differently. But really, it's those moments that we say, boy, I wish I would have spent more time with my loved one, my family member, my kid, my spouse, my friends. It's time that we want together, not necessarily events or actions. And so to be able to take that moment this morning and for you to be present and in that moment and just engage in that moment is critical for any stage of life, whether it be transitions like we're getting ready to talk about, or whether it be you're in a really good, stable place in life and you're in a good living situation. You're in a good relational situation. So that's kind of where I land this morning.
And it also, in terms of, reminds you that you can change the mindset that you may be caught in. Like you said, you said, I've got to do this work. And then you said, no, wait a minute, what's more important? Which means that you have the flexibility. Say, look, I can choose what to do, and taking time out to do this is going to make it easier for me to get back to whatever it is that I thought was so important, because my mind has been has transitioned to another place of pleasure, and then I can go pour myself into work. It's kind of like getting away from it gives you a different perspective of what the original problem is. Well, and that's real key.
I want to add really quick a kind of a dark twist, if I can. You know, we talked about you said the ability to choose. When you realize and you come to the reality that you can choose whether to spend time with people who need you versus your job, and you understand that you are choosing, you know, for the negative, your job over your kids, or your job over your spouse, or your vacation over that kind of stuff, that becomes a very, very big burden to carry once you realize that you're carrying it. Now, there's times that you forget, or that you say, you know, I could have said, hey, Landon, I would love to do that with you, but I've got a podcast in about 10 minutes and I need to make sure everybody's ready. So why don't you go set that stuff up? And then the moment I'm done, we can go. But I had the time, you know, I had 30 minutes, but I could spare 5 of those 30 minutes embracing with my son. And in that moment, I chose my son over my work. And when I realized that the weight of what that means, he sees that. He's only 7 years old. But he sees that choice that I am making to be there for him and not my work, which is great, because now it shows that he sees how much I care for him.
And he also sees something else, and that is that we can begin, you know, we as males have been conditioned to be workers. We, in fact, well, certainly in my generation, I saw very little of my father because he was out there trying to make money for the family. And that was the way we did in those days. And I picked that up, and I tended to put work instead of me. And with some damage. And I think we're coming out of that as a society, but we still have it, and we still have to make those, you know, be okay with making those choices where it's people, it's our children, our family, are more important. And I'll say even my dog is perhaps more important than dashing up and doing some kind of work for some anonymous organization or whatever. It's the knowledge that I can make those choices. I'm free to make those choices. Helps me to value the work I do. That gives me that room, but also value how important people and our pets are to us.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a different perspective. I'm glad you brought that up because that's an important message because we still get caught up in it.
Yeah.
And the work is important. We're valued by our work.
Well, we can spend an entire show on just on the work.
Well, that transition, transition because, we lose our job. We feel that we've lost everything.
Yeah.
Because we have our whole image based on a job.
Well, it's funny you bring up the job because we actually have a question relating to a job. This is from Peter in Florida. He asked, "Why do I feel guilty for struggling with a positive change? I just got a new job and my family is happy for me, but I still feel guilty because it's taking more time away from them." It's interesting he uses the word guilty for struggling with a positive change.
Right. Well, he sounds like he's ambivalent, number one, because we have this thing. Our work is our identity,
sure.
But at the same time, he says my family is my identity. I'm just putting words in his mouth. My family. How do I deal with what appears to be a disconnect between the identity of work and identity as a family man?
Mm-hmm.
And they're in conflict with one another. And part of his job, as we were talking a little earlier, is to figure out a way. I think sometimes that working for a family firm is a compromise, but I understand a lot of people particularly have trouble with that. The families break up over the business. Yeah. But in terms of saying, okay, what are my values? What is important to me, and how can I balance? And this is the toughie, because we're trying to balance family, and then you have the people who assume are over you, saying, no, this job is important. And you have to feel free to say, no, I know where the boundaries are.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go a different way with that because when I read this question, why do I feel guilty for struggling with a positive change? It sounds like he maybe left a job that he wasn't super happy in and went to something that's good, but now is conflicted because he's enjoying this good thing and he's trying to, like you were saying, balance, this relationship with his family. For me as a man walking through something like, I'm not really in his particular situation, but when I think of, because I'm in a job that I really love and it's making those conscious efforts. I don't think you should really feel guilty with a positive change. I think if there's guilt, it's that you're not spending enough time with your family, or that you're used to spending more time with your family and now you're not. Because maybe he was coming home from, I don't know this guy from Adam, obviously, and we don't know the whole story. However, I would assume that if he's in a really bad job, he's probably coming home more eagerly to get away from a bad job than staying at somewhere he likes, and now he feels guilty for wanting to stay at work or be in a happy job that might be taking more away from his family.
taking more attention away. See, if you have a lousy job, as you're saying, you can, put all your energy in the family. But if you have a really positive job, you feel good about it. And some people have difficulty internally with success, with the idea that I've got something that's for me, and they feel guilty because they're not sure that they deserve it. And I think that is the deserving is saying, I have this wonderful job. What happened here?
What happened?
Yeah, what happened? Why do I have this wonderful job? Am I going to pay the price? See, this is the other part. We think if we have something good, we're going to pay a price for it. And that can be, for a family training, about the idea, do you deserve that something good? Are you worthy? And, so there must be something wrong with it, a payoff that you have to make for something that's really great for you.
Yeah.
And one of the areas you look at, well, maybe I won't be able to spend as much time with my family, or maybe I'm not, or, my perception is that my attention is being taken away from the family for this job. And it may in fact be kind of, as we say, a transition where we have to understand that we have control over all of this. We can control time with the family. We can also have that good job. We can have both sides working for us. And we are not going to pay a price for it.
Right.
And that's a hard lesson that a lot of people, anytime they get something good, something's liable to happen.
So, Lakeisha, in Oregon, how can someone recognize the early signs that a life transition is impacting their mental health, and what can they do to address it before it becomes overwhelming?
That's a very...
That's a loaded question there, Bill.
Loaded question. Yeah, absolutely. Because we have to look at, see, as I said last week, we have two parts that we can play with in this kind of situation. One is our emotional self. Oh, I'm going to, this is going to impact, this is going to be a problem. And then there's the logic self that says, okay, let me look at this. What am I concerned about? What am I afraid of? What's going on here? How is this impacting negatively on me? And that's a logic question. And we have to kind of close the door and just sit down and ponder those very important questions. That's for starters. If we have some trouble doing that, that's when it's helpful to have, a job coach, life coach, or a professional in some way help us to sort this out. There's always that option, but we start really, and in talking to other people. See, one of the problems, and particularly we as men, do not like to reveal anything to anybody.
Sure.
And that's our training. And so consequently, for us to say to somebody, look, I have this dilemma, somebody that we trust, this is what's going on. What do you think? And I don't mean somebody in the family, because they have their biases.
Yeah.
But a friend, if someone is another professional, another, in a comparable kind of position, say, this is, our clergy.
Yeah.
If they know, if they have some pastoral training, that will be helpful. If you feel confident in that person, and say, this is what my dilemma is, and can you help me with that? And sometimes it pays to talk to several people, and then out of that come up with what fits you, an understanding that fits you, how all of this fits together for you.
So, how can someone recognize the early signs that life transition is impacting their mental health? I think you first have to know. Boy, the easy answer is to kind of know yourself and to understand what makes you tick.
Well, more than that, it's to be more specific. How is that impacting on your mental health?
Right.
For example, and that's part of the issue, and that's the first thing you want to figure out. In what way do I perceive it as impacting on my mental health? For example, if you're working in a company where they're doing some things that are unethical in your mind, that will stand out. And you might say, well, it's a good job, it pays well, I'll just overlook it. And even the fact that you're raising the question is a sign that think again.
Yeah.
This is not working for you.
Yeah, just addressing the question and saying something is going wrong. That's a very wise thing to do. Just in asking that question. So, Lakeisha, and I hope that helped. Bill, did you have anything else on that?
Yeah, I do. The other thing is related to our earlier question, and it comes back again, as I'm saying, that intellect thing. How exactly is it impacting on me? Is it, I said ethics, but let's say that it's working someplace where they're really telling you, forget the family or forget, you've got to, be here all the time, and we call you at home, and you don't have anything away from there. No job is worth it.
Yeah.
I'll make that blanket statement that we have to be able to have time off. We have to take care of our mental health.
Yeah.
And it means, it comes back to the self-care issue. If the job is impacting on us, no job, no amount of money, believe it or not, is worth it. If you're feeling so much stress that you're finding yourself drinking more, that's a sign.
Yeah.
That'd be the first thing. If you came in to see me and I found that out, I'd be right there.
Absolutely.
If you find that you can't sleep, or that you're, you don't feel like any energy to do anything for yourself, then that job is not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got one more. We got one more that's local, and this is from Megan. After becoming a new parent, I was overwhelmed by how much I didn't know. I felt like I had to master everything right away, from feeding schedules to understanding my baby's needs, but the harder I pushed myself, the more stressed and exhausted I became. It took a conversation with another parent to realize that I needed to be kinder to myself and allow room for mistakes. Once I started taking things one day at a time, balancing learning and self-compassion, I became a better parent, and I was a lot more at peace. How can someone find the balance between being patient with themselves during a life transition while still pushing themselves to adapt and grow? Holy smokes.
Yep, that's got many dimensions to it.
Well, first of all, I just want to say congratulations on becoming a new parent. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Sure. Overwhelmed by how much you didn't know? Yes. Been there.
Welcome to parenthood.
Oh my gosh. The sleep schedules, the feedings, all those stuff.
Right, absolutely.
A friend of mine just had a baby, and him and his wife are, they're 3 on, 3 off, 3 on, 3 off. It's every 3 hours. It's insane. So goodness gracious.
It is. You wonder sometimes why people want to be parents. I guess because they don't know what they're in for.
Or even worse, when you have 10, 11, 12, 13 kids.
Yeah.
Holy
Please.
smokes.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
how can someone find the balance between being patient with themselves during a life transition while still pushing themselves to adapt and grow? It's a great question.
It is a great question because and the key word is balance.
Yeah.
And what is it that we're looking for? And again, this is where some of the logic with the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
If you say, I'm not real comfortable with the pace of where I have to transition, how fast I have to transition. At the same time, I want to grow. I'm forcing myself to grow. But wait a minute, be kind to yourself and say, okay, let's take baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see how it is for me. I know that I want to become president of a company at the same time I'm a new parent. No, I don't think that quite works.
Yeah.
But if you say, okay, this transition that I'm in, I'm really taking some professional challenges and I want to take them, but I need to measure how much I can take on at any one time and have some control over that. And a lot of times, professionals, this is a big controversy, I think, in terms of women and their women in the workplace, in terms of some companies overthink and say, oh, she can't do it because she has. But that is the individual decision that says, look, I can handle this. This is how I'm able to lay this out, which is the logic part.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to be there emotionally for my family if that's where the dichotomy is. Or I want to be able to do certain things that are non-work related. In Colorado, is skiing, hiking, and so forth. But I also want, and I enjoy that, but I want to also be there at the office and doing what needs to be done because I want to make my career work. How do I balance the two? And that's an individual decision based on who you are.
Yeah, and parenthood is clearly not an easy thing to do and to take on. And, she said that, where is it? Once I started taking things one day at a time, balancing and learning self-compassion. That for me is a big part right there because as parents.
Absolutely. She's learned that.
Yeah, well,
she's learned that already.
Well, even if she hasn't learned that all the way, she is
none of us have, but yeah.
She's giving herself that self-compassion and that the ability to say, look, I'm not going to be perfect all day long, every day, every hour of every day, right? That's unrealistic for those things to happen. Transitioning from being I'm assuming she doesn't have any kids before this first one, but being a single lady or married, she now has a kid. That's a huge transition, and learning to be at one with yourself is difficult. And when you're trying to adapt and grow and you want to learn new things and do those things, it takes that other mindset to say, okay, I'm going to learn and grow in parenting. I'm going to learn and grow in wisdom or in whatever it is that you're trying to learn and grow or adapt and grow in. But yes, having that self-compassion component is massive.
It is. And that's one of the things that parenting kind of forces you to take a look at those choices because you can't have it all.
No.
Despite what people say, you can't have it all. So you make some choices. Okay, I get great pride in watching my child grow. And I also get some great feelings from my work, my line of work, whatever I do. Now, what she's asking is, how do I balance the two? And, the balance is, again, as I said before, experimenting, seeing, take small doses You can't so much in the parenting. That kind of is laid out for you by,
Right.
by having a kid.
Yeah.
But gradually watch yourself as you take some time for, those other things that you value. And also, that can be where some people can help.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you get creative and you find that several women with children have the same thing, you can take turns in taking care of the kids.
Yeah.
Pull the kids.
Right. Yeah.
And while you experiment with whatever it is you want to do and find out how much it takes.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm constantly amazed at myself about, because it's, I'm supposed to be a therapist. I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. I even have a podcast, but then I do dumb things like saying, oh, I can't do this.
Right.
And then, I do it. And I said, oh, it wasn't that hard.
Right.
But we build a ghost in our mind, a shape in our mind that something is going to be, if we do this, we can't do anything else. When really, when we give it a try, we say, oh, why was I such a nutcase about this thing that I was putting off?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, this is going to sound really stupid, but yesterday I finally realized, poor Aiden has had a doggy bed for a couple of years and hasn't been washed, and I don't know how to wash it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, finally, and I put it off because I didn't know what to do.
Sure.
Which is dumb. I'll admit that. So I finally discovered that there was a tag on it that gave the instructions.
There you go.
And I couldn't get the instructions to come up on my scanner.
Okay.
So I went to my neighbor and I said, look, what are the instructions? And she told me. And in fact, she turned around and said, look, I can do this. And she put the bed, I took it apart and then put it in, and this morning, last night and this morning, he was sleeping in his own bed instead of mine.
There you go.
Perfect. And I said, Daddy, why didn't you do this a long time ago? But that's what I mean.
I don't want to sleep in dirty sheets.
Right. You don't sleep in dirty sheets. Why do you expect me to?
Right. Exactly.
But my point is that we build things up to be so massive as to impact on this other thing, like parenting or whatever, when really, if we look at it real closely, it may not be that big.
Yeah.
And that requires us to kind of look at it, maybe try it out, see how it works. And then we can decide not to do it if you find, no, it takes entirely too much time.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's a way that we can do part of it, but not all of it. And it really is, it's again, risk taking. Try it out in small doses. You try something out doesn't mean you have to commit it for the rest of your life. You just try out and see if you can fit that in.
Absolutely. Well, as we wrap up this show, I want to read this one thing to you and to our audience members, because I think it's very pertinent to the ability to transition and whether it's the right time or the right season. And it says there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the sun, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, and a time for war and a time for peace. And when I think of this, it's okay that you're not in a moment of transition. And sometimes people transition for transition's sake because they're bored or they're
bored.
And they don't want to move, or they either want to move forward in their life because they're bored or they have to move forward. But it's important to know that for whatever season you're in that season for a reason. And it's okay to be there. It's okay to embrace that season and say, what can I learn from this transition time? What can I learn from this season of life? What can I learn from being a new parent, getting a new job, and all that kind of stuff? Right. And it's okay to let there be a time for joy, or a time to be upset, or to mourn, and going through all of these transitions is hard. So keep those questions coming, and we'll help you out with whatever we can. Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a very good way to put it. I frankly say, it's okay. I say more than okay. I say it is important that we give time to all those things and take the time to get to know ourselves and to experiment and what we're capable of being and doing, and what we need and what we don't need.
Yeah.
And it requires us to, to sit back and look at ourselves and take that time, take deep breaths. And we'll be doing some meditation at some point to take some deep breaths and say, what do I want right now?
Yeah.
And know that if it's the right time, we'll be able to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Blind Sight. Bill Lundgren, your host, and Jonathan Price, producer and co-host today. We look forward to you continuing to listen to us. If you have any feedback, please, like these people that gave us feedback, very helpful to us. You can do email feedback at aftersight.org, or leave a message for us on our feedback line, which is 720-712-8856. With that, we'll say goodbye. Look forward to talking with you again.